Hello, it's Robert here, fact checker and science blogger, and I'm going to talk this time about the number of vaccines that are available that we've got pre-ordered, and it's really quite extraordinary. We've got, first of all, there's the 1.97 billion for the COVAX facility, and that means it's enough to vaccinate about 1 billion people, and pre-ordered. These vaccines are not all approved yet. A lot of that is AstraZeneca, and we've only got the preliminary, the early stage results for AstraZeneca so far, and the World Health Organization will not do their emergency use authorization, unlike the United Kingdom did a bit earlier, until they've got the proper final results from the phase 3. But they're very likely, they're sure to approve it, but they might have variations in their advice they give and so on, once they look at it properly. So that means that we can all together, the whole planet is going to be able to vaccinate. So that's 90%, this is 90% of the world have those. And this is, well, it's more than 10% because some of the ones in COVAX are also in this category as well. I've got 7.4 billion. But certainly there are much fewer people for the 7.4 billion. The 7.4 billion doses is far more doses than the people who ordered them actually need. So it's very likely, well, some of these are going to go over there. 7.4 includes the 1.97 billion. So we actually have enough doses to vaccinate, pre-ordered, to vaccinate half the world population already, of these vaccines that are very likely to be approved. I mean, certain to be approved, most of them. And so that's the situation. And these can all be produced next year. So by the end of 2021, I'd be very surprised if less than half the world population is vaccinated. Because, and this is assuming that these. So what happened is that countries like Canada, particularly, for instance, they hedge their bets by getting enough for their entire population from several different vaccines. And then all those vaccines look likely to be approved. So they end up with a huge surplus of vaccine, far more than they need for their population. And the UK did the same, and the United States and the EU all ordered far too many vaccines for their population, and several other countries like that. So these, because they only costed, for them it was only, in inverted commas, billions of dollars. But it's not much when you've got an economy as big as the United States, the United Kingdom, and a huge effect of the lockdown on our economy. So it made a lot of sense to spend a few $1 billion, which for them is almost pocket change, as it were, compared with the effects that were going on. But for a country in sub-Saharan Africa, that's a huge amount, and for the COVAX Alliance. So it took quite a long time for them to scrape together the money to buy these 2 billion doses, but they haven't now done it, or had some of them donated. So that's the situation at the moment. But and so surely Canada has already said that after it's vaccinated its own population, it's going to give all the surplus doses to COVAX. So that's quite a few. And then there's sure to be other ones. Indeed, it'd be ridiculous if countries that have billions of extra doses and they don't give them, or in some way find a way for the rest of the world to, it benefits the entire world, to stop it everywhere. So that's the situation with the vaccines. It's pretty promising. And then this is the actual capability, is that we could actually vaccinate 20 billion. We could do 20 billion doses, enough for more than the world population in 2021. We have that capability if we finance it, and but that is assuming that we do all that's a rather optimistic figure, but based on that. So we have here, we've got the capacity for 7.7 billion doses of these pre-ordered things, of these vaccines in the first half, and then we've got 12.2 billion in the second half. Then look at 2022, 28.2 billion. We're talking about being able to vaccinate double the world population in just the first half of 2022. Slightly optimistic, an optimistic projection, but remember, most of those vaccines are going to be approved. In fact, possibly all of them. So the way things are going, it looks very surprising. We've had a recent inactivated vaccine that's got very good preliminary results from China. That's another kind of vaccine. So it looks like all the kinds of vaccines are going to give good results on information so far, at least. And then we've got some really fine ones coming up. Anyway, so I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. I'm not sure where to put every bit of what I'm going to talk about. But anyway, so this is with the full dose and 2 doses. But there's sure to be some optimizing of the doses, and that might well mean we can vaccinate more people with the same amount of vaccine than these figures. So I wouldn't be surprised if we vaccinate everyone, if we have enough vaccine for everyone in 2021. It just depends. So now, and the WHO have approved Pfizer, and they'd like to approve the others, as I said. So this is really an extraordinary thing. We have never vaccinated so many people so quickly. Just not even in the United Kingdom, we have never vaccinated so many people so quickly in the United Kingdom. But we're doing this over the entire world. And by the end of the spring, going into summer, we expect to be in a situation where every very elderly person who wants to be vaccinated has been vaccinated. Every health worker in the entire world has been vaccinated. And everyone who's got a vulnerable underlying condition that makes you vulnerable to COVID-19, if it's appropriate for the vaccine, to vaccinate these people, and they've also been vaccinated. We have never ever done anything even remotely like this. And the World Health Organization talked about it last year as a beacon of hope for future programs, because we have several diseases that we could eliminate from the entire world if we just vaccinated everyone who wants a vaccine. And we just have never done it. And some of them, for instance, the polio vaccine, then if you look at the attenuated vaccine, if we'd use the higher quality vaccine, polio vaccine, the one that can't mutate to reinfect people again, then we could have vaccinated the whole world half a century ago, more than half a century ago, and eliminated polio. Like we eliminated smallpox. It's basically because of the difference in expense of the attenuated, not attenuated, what's the word, inactivated vaccine. That one was more expensive. That was used to eliminate polio from the Americas. And then the less expensive one was used in much of the rest of the world, and that one, attenuated, unfortunately had the capability that they could mutate after passing through someone's digestion system, and then if someone else drank contaminated water or whatever, they then could get full polio again. And that's basically the main reason why polio hasn't yet been eradicated, because we used the lower price vaccine, and we continue to use it, even though we knew that it wasn't as good as the higher price vaccine, because we just didn't have the money to pay for the higher price vaccine for the entire world. It just wasn't being given. So hopefully we're getting to a point where this sort of thing is not going to happen anymore. And we're very close to eliminating polio, but still they're looking at a lower price vaccine than the one that's used in the Americas, because they don't quite have the funding to use that around the world. But there's a new safe attenuated vaccine that the Gates Foundation is developing that will be able to, that doesn't have this problem of mutating. Anyway, so this actually understanding as a world, it benefits the entire world. If we could get rid of polio, it benefits the entire world. And that, if was well worth the cost of the more expensive vaccine if we'd have got rid of polio 50 years ago. And if you think about just look at the economic effects like that, and then all the deaths and all the things, and the harm it's had on the world as a whole over polio for half a century, because we didn't have the finance to use the more expensive vaccine. So people are beginning to turn things around and look at things a little bit differently now. And hopefully, I mean, it's a very strong argument. Countries that are financing the rest of the world to get rid of COVID-19, they're benefiting themselves, because they're helping us to become in a world where all the countries can open up again, they can all restart their economies, they can, and then if it's completely virus-free, then a world where you can go anywhere in the world and you know you're not going to get COVID. We can be headed there. And this just makes sense. And so even just looking at it like that. And I think actually that extraterrestrial, looking at our species, they might well look all ourselves 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years from now, looking back in history, might possibly think of this year as when we just started to mature as a civilization. I think this is an act of a fair bit of maturity to vaccinate the entire world like this so fast, and that we've all got behind it to the extent we did. And yes, the rich countries started a bit earlier, but they are still supporting the whole world doing it. And it just makes sense, it's civilized, it's sensible, and we're going to do it. So I think that's a wonderful thing myself. You've got to look at the direction, looking at this civilization is rather not that far beyond fire or the Stone Age. We've got these things to be very proud of, these computers, but in 1,000,000 years from now they would seem like nothing. They would seem very big, clumsy things. And yet we're very young, primitive civilization really, but we are making these steps, and really quite a major step, I think, to vaccinate the entire world, and so quickly. And the other things we're doing, working together to support each other, countries supporting each other in so many different ways. Now, there's a question, will we eradicate it or will we tame it? I've talked about that before. I don't want to spend too much time on that. So it's, actually, I think we've got an excellent chance of eradicating it. But the thing is, the taming is, if we just very quickly said, taming is if you use the vaccine and just about everyone vaccinated, that's reduced the risk of dying maybe 20-fold. It could be more than that. It may almost completely prevent dying. They just don't have the data for that yet. And then enough intensive care units, and then on top of that, then we've got the therapeutics, and the WHO Health Organization think we'll have much better therapeutics to treat COVID by in a few months' time, as we work through the newer, we're on to like the second round of vaccines, of therapeutics now, and hopefully they'll come up some really fantastic drugs to help treat this disease. They're also brilliant ideas. We've got to see if they work. So anyway, but we can also get rid of it completely so that's the taming, is where you end up with it being much less dangerous. And then the ending it completely, but even if it was like flu, well, if you got it down to be like a similar level of danger to flu, we'd much rather not have flu. I mean, the world would be, I'm sure, if you could actually vote, which would you prefer, a world with or without flu? I mean, you'd much prefer a world without flu. So, so if we can, we should go for that. And so, but New Zealand have already shown how we can do that. And so I've talk about that a little bit, that Joe Biden is going to be following the science, just like New Zealand did. And we have not seen that. Really, we haven't seen that. We haven't seen that in Europe. I don't think any country in Europe has really, truly, totally followed the science. It's always been politicised. And in particular, Mike Ryan said that his golden wish would be for quarantine in Europe to be done properly. He says he doesn't think this is be done systematically anywhere in Europe. If you're following the science, that should be a top priority, to make sure that that anyone supported quarantine and quarantine away from your household, given the opportunity to do that. So, because the 80% of transmission is to other people in your own household. So, I don't think any country in Europe has really followed the science properly. They've always had element of politics in it. And this has been very strong in the United Kingdom, and obviously in the United States, it's been very, very much politicised. And I think politicians don't really quite understand, a lot of them don't understand how science works. You don't argue science in the same way you argue politics. It's not based on people's opinions, or it shouldn't be. And to confuse it, we have scientists who politicise science. So they actually, or even sometimes it's junk or completely fraudulent science, or in some cases it's people, with COVID-19 we've had an awful lot of people who have never done any research into COVID-19 and who only know about flu or only know about even something completely unrelated like microbes or something, and this is a virus. So, and then you get people who are not epidemiologists and then who make all sorts of claims. And and then the people who really are the experts on it, and like this Maria van Kerkhove, head of the science team in the World Health Organization, they are almost never on television. If you know, you can go and watch on the World Health Organization website. You find loads and loads of videos that she did explaining things in great detail and great clarity. I have never seen one of those videos on the BBC. And loads of other programs by people who are much less knowledgeable about the science of COVID-19 than she is. I've seldom seen anyone who's really, really, truly knowledgeable actually researching and then constantly doing systematic reviews on COVID-19. And I don't think the United Kingdom, on the BBC, we've had a single programme that has actually got the scientists themselves explaining the science to answering questions from the general public, like the social media Q/A of the World Health Organization. Let us hear directly what the scientists say. So the thing is that science works a different way from politics. There's certain things you can't argue with science. You can come up with different conclusions and then you have a living systematic review, but there's a final answer, a truth that you're headed towards, and that truth is unarguable. So politicians aren't used to stuff like that, where you have uncertainty at the early stages, lots of things you don't know. But it's not whatever your opinion is not going to change the science. You might want it to go one way, but you explore it and you find it goes the other way. And that's just the way science is. And you can't argue it back again. If you want the vaccine to be more to stop transmission and it doesn't, you can't change that. That's just what the science has found. So politicians are not used to things to these kind of truths that are not wishy-washy truths that you can push around and spin. And I think that's an awful lot of the problem that we've had with COVID-19. In the United Kingdom with Boris Johnson, he's a classic scholar, and he's just completely out of depth when it comes to science, it seems to me. And with Trump in the United States, then he's just totally politicizing it so much, he was. And just, again, trying to change the truth. And you can't. Science just doesn't work like that. The truth of science is not mutable. It doesn't depend on your opinion at all. Like, if you want to let go something, it'll fall and it'll hit the ground. It doesn't matter how much you don't want it to hit the ground, that's what's going to happen. And as we find out more about the vaccine, the things we find out are like that. And then the effectiveness of these measures, was very clear results by mid-February, very clear 25th of February, very clear data from China about how to stop the spread of this virus. We have known how to do it since then, but it's just got so politicised and people are just not following that advice. And they're still, in the United Kingdom, in Europe, I think most of Europe, people are just not following it in all detail. They say, oh, well, we'll do this, that's a good thing, yes, that sounds like a good idea, but we're not going to bother with the quarantine, because that's a little bit too awkward and difficult. And that is one of the most important things to do. Like, to do the quarantine properly. We're going to let people quarantine at home, so they make a political decision, or it's a bit awkward to offer quarantine in hotels. So we just say, okay, you've got to quarantine together with your family at home. And that is missing the essential point that the Chinese discovered very early on that 80% of the transmission is happening in the households. And if someone is a contact in a household, they need to isolate away from the rest of the household. And the politicians just don't appreciate the importance of that point. And so, but Joe Biden, he's not a scientist either, but he respects science. And Jacinda Ardern is not a scientist, but she respects science. And both of them seem to understand this basic essential point that I'm just trying to say just now, the immutability of the truth that science gives you. And then, based on that, so that's basic point, I think. I think that is the basic point of how Joe Biden and Jacinda Ardern differ from most politicians. That they understand that science is immutable, and that there's a certain truth there, and you can't change it by your opinions. But then you have executive decisions to make, of course. So having understood that truth, whatever it is, or with a range of uncertainty, and sometimes you have to make, so the United Kingdom did do it properly when they looked at having the first dose and then delaying the second dose for 12 weeks. That's an example of clear-eyed looking at the science and then making an executive decision based on the science. That was okay. That was a good decision, I thought. Made a lot of sense for the United Kingdom. That's an example of an executive decision. The science can't make decisions like that. The science gives you the data and then says, we have all these uncertainties. So there's a really quite a strong role for politicians. But it's they have very sadly often tried to argue with the science in a way that's not appropriate because they don't quite understand how science works. So there are very difficult executive decisions to be made, but it's sometimes not where the politicians think the decisions are, not if you're sensible. So that is why I really expect that with Joe Biden following the science properly for the first time ever in the United States, someone at the head following the science properly, that's why I expect it to go down like it did in New Zealand, a tenfold reduction in 25 days. That would be, and it was a similar reduction for Wuhan, with the Chinese followed the science too. So Chinese are the only ones, and then Taiwan. Taiwan has an epidemiologist, Deputy Prime Minister or something, I can't remember his title, but it's no wonder they followed the science very carefully because they actually had I think epidemiologists, I think it was, or something like that, very close to the discipline that is needed to understand what's going on. And that is really why Taiwan was so successful. They've never even had a lockdown. And so anyway, if the United States does what New Zealand did, and then if they can get, Joe Biden thinks that he's going to get that they're going to see what's happening, and they're going to see the cases going down and the deaths going down, and then I think this he thinks will help him, and I think he may well be right, and this will help him to get the general public in the United States behind him to stay the course right to the end. So then the other thing that is very important, so hopefully by the end of his first 100 days, then it's likely it's only got a few cases per state, cases per day per state. At that point, you need to keep on the course and keep going down, and that's when you need really good, skillful, careful communication to the public. And that's where we went wrong in the United Kingdom. When we got down to just a few cases per million in Scotland, then the thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is the basic maths here. If your R naught is less than 1, then eventually it'll be gone. There's no way for it to start increasing again without the R naught increasing. So once you're down to a few cases per million, and your R naught is less than 1, keep it below 1 for a little bit longer, and it'll be gone. And it's actually easier, once you've only got a few cases left in your entire country, then mobilize all your resources on those few cases. Test, trace, isolate, quarantine, put them up in the Savoy or something, in the plushest hotels, whatever it needs is needed to make sure that people do actually quarantine and do actually isolate. You should be, and then you really get all the contact tracers and have everyone focused on those few remaining cases to make sure that it stops, and then it'll go away. We could have done that in Scotland in the summer, but sadly England did it first, and then Scotland did. We just eased up our restrictions. We said, oh, we've only got a few per million, we can ease up now. And you can understand why a lot of pressure from people in the general public saying, oh, well, we've been under lockdown for so many months, do we really have to keep going for another 2 weeks? Scotland kept going for 2 weeks more than England, but then eventually they eased up and then it started going off again. So we've got to stick the course, and then we can eliminate it. And and then with the new variant, then this, as Angela Rasmussen said, it doesn't confer superpowers to the virus. It's not more transmissible because it's not. If it is more transmissible, it's not because B117 can magically teleport or do anything like that. It's not a superpower, and it's transmitted in the same way as the others. And it's possible it's more transmissible, but that means if it is more transmissible, and the people are arguing still about the data, it'll probably be a few more weeks until we know for sure. But if it is more transmissible, it means that if you don't do your physical distancing, don't wear your mask properly, you're constantly yattering away to people within 15 minutes, within 1 metre for more than 15 minutes, then you're more likely to get it with this variant than with other variants. But if you keep doing the proper physical distancing, wear the masks carefully and not touch the front of the mask and all that stuff that you should be doing, and if you wash your hands thoroughly, and if everyone was doing that, then it really, that's far more important than the slight difference in transmissibility, even if it's 0.4 something. But what someone else, I found another thing, like for instance, keeping children at school. I'll talk about it in a separate video, like this is going on, but keeping children at school probably added 0.4 to the R naught. And that's as much as they think the new variant did. So it's keeping them at school and not letting them properly physically distance or wearing masks. Then the difference between schools opening and schools closed around the world has been about 0.4 in the R naught in a big study published in October. So even if they were right that it's as much as 0.4 difference, then it's about the same as the difference between opening schools and not opening them with proper physical distancing and mask wearing, or closing them, or doing safe physical schooling. So anyway, and so you can continue to protect yourself against the new variant just as much as the old one. And I think I talked about that, but we don't know if we can end this pandemic or we'll tame it. Increasing time between doses, I'm not quite sure what I've talked about now. The WHO, oh yes, I did talk about that the WHO said, I did talk about how that was an example of a good executive decision. I think the UK did a tough one, and you can't say they were right. The science isn't in yet, But I think it was a decent executive decision, put it like that. You can't say it absolutely was the right thing to do because we don't have the science yet. But the World Health Organization do, but there's some quite good supportive science that suggests AstraZeneca is particularly of 12 weeks. They had some examples of people with 12 weeks. The World Health Organization said it's okay to increase to 6 weeks with Pfizer, because some people just through natural variation, they accidentally, they just don't get the second vaccine in time. It's gone up to 6 weeks with Pfizer, and they seem still to be protected. And it's not such strong data, but it's good enough to, so that if you feel that you have a difficulty getting enough vaccine to everyone, it makes sense to increase it to 6 weeks for Pfizer. I think they'll say 12 weeks is okay for AstraZeneca, but we'll see what happens when the World Health Organization eventually approve the AstraZeneca vaccine. So talk about that. I'm going to talk about this. Oh yeah, well, just very quickly say, and then I'll stop. So I've got some other things here, but I think I need to stop quite soon anyway, another 5 minutes or so. So if you, I still get people who are worried about the vaccine being the mark of the beast. So these are people from probably mostly Bible Belt United States, where you've got this idea that there's this Bible passage which talks about this mark of the beast, and they think that this has got to be on your forehead and your what's it, your hand or something. You don't actually vaccinate on the hand, so I mean the vaccine is in the upper arm, which is not where the mark is supposed to be. But these people still worry about it, and they think that this means that there's going to be, and it's not, and they don't vaccinate your forehead. Nobody would even think vaccinating someone's forehead, so it doesn't really make much sense. Or their hand, it's the wrong place. I've never heard of people vaccinating. Maybe if you've heard of a vaccine that is vaccinating in the hand, do tell me. Anyway, so but as well as that, it's the Bible passage about this beast, that having the mark of the beast, says very clearly that the second beast will force everyone to worship the first beast, and they will kill anyone who doesn't get the mark and then vaccinate the first beast. If you don't believe that, some people who think they know the Bible very well don't seem to know this. Just go and read the passage, and you'll find that's what it says. And there's nobody who is asking you to worship anyone. And if you're skeptical about that, you've seen people being vaccinated on television, and they don't have to worship anyone. And nobody kills anyone if they don't get vaccinated. Indeed, that would totally destroy the point of the whole thing. If they were going around killing everyone who isn't vaccinated, that would be very silly. I mean, of course, totally unethical and illegal. And so there's almost no point, there really is no point of resemblance with the mark of the beast. It's not the mark of the beast, absolutely certain. And indeed, it's very difficult to see how anything like that could arise in our current world, because we don't have, back then it made sense because emperors were worshipped. There was an element of emperor worship. So and there were some of the other things related, so you could think of this. Indeed, they think it could be Emperor Nero they was talking about, because that number 616 or 666 relates to Emperor Nero. So there is a possibility way back at the time of the 1st century AD it sort of made sense, and some people think that's what it's all about. But there's nothing, it's very, very rare to have rulers, either governments or kings or queens in the present day world that require people to worship them. And it is not plausible that any such ruler, I think the only thing I can think is remotely close to it is Kim Jong-un, but he's not really quite that. And there's no way that any such ruler is going to become someone who brings peace to the entire world at the same time as requiring them all to put a mark on their hand or forehead, and then someone else say that you're going to be killed if you. I mean, just too many things that just don't fit our modern world anymore. So I very hard to see how the mark of the beast could fit anything nowadays. Certainly not. But anyway, whatever you think about that, certainly not the vaccine. And some people think that Biden's plans to lock down, that was just campaign stuff. No, he doesn't. He just said if the scientists say that a lockdown is needed, he will listen to them carefully. And the question said, scientists said what you really need, and the only way to get through this is a lockdown. And then he said, well, then I listen to the science. So you do have to listen to the science, but you also have room for executive decisions. So anyway, meanwhile, what we all need to do is just keep doing all the same things as before. Now, whatever country you're in, please try not to cause political divisions. So I was very pleased in the United Kingdom to hear that when Boris Johnson announced this lockdown, that the leader of the opposition just went all with it and didn't kind of produce conflicting messages. And that's what we need to do. I don't agree with this lockdown in the sense that I think there are far better ways of dealing with this situation. Doing test, trace, isolate, quarantine, that in the autumn they should have permitted the children to wear masks in schools. They should have had done physical distancing in schools. Probably, since the classrooms aren't big enough, they should probably have kept some of the children at school at home with distance learning and done the physical distancing. But that hasn't happened. And now we're in lockdown, and this is one thing that we have actually has succeeded. It's the only thing that has really succeeded in the United Kingdom before. So I'm not going to speak against lockdown. We do what we can in our situation, and just if you just do what the government has asked, but in addition go a bit further, because they don't really explain so much. So most of you reading this will have already done this, but if not, do check. You know how to wash your hands. If you think you know how to wash your hands, but you've never watched the video by Dr. Tedros on how to wash your hands to be completely free of COVID-19 on your hands, follow it. Basically, you've got to get soap absolutely everywhere, and most people don't when they wash their hands. And there's a particular way of doing it that can ensure that. Then physical distancing, just make it absolutely routine. Always step back, except with your bubble, and if with your bubble do that as well if you're isolating or quarantining. Do check up how to quarantine. Read the proper way of doing it with the World Health Organization. Learn the proper way to put on your face coverings. Learn how to contact trace. So that means that people look for, if you are a case, then you should contact trace yourself. You don't need to wait for the contact tracers to get to you, which takes a very long time in the United Kingdom. They may never get to you. You can help protect your friends who you were in very close contact with if you were not doing physical distancing and you were close contact for more than 15 minutes, then you should be on the phone talking to them and saying, do you know you may be a contact, I've got COVID-19, and then advise them on the best way to do that if they're receptive to listening, and basically put them in touch with the right information. And so yes, just do it all, and then stay informed. And I say very much listen to the World Health Organization, absolute experts. If you're in the United States, the US CDC are also very good. And stay informed. And in the United Kingdom, of course, stay informed of what you're supposed to do, and the information that we do have. But sadly, as I said, there are quite a few gaps in the information. It's not really explained. And we don't have what Jacinda Ardern did in New Zealand, constantly on television, explaining very clearly to the public and very open and explaining everything, saying why we're doing it and all the reasons for your decisions. Completely clear and out in the open, knowing in advance what's going to happen and why in advance, not decided suddenly at the last minute for some political reason as a result of weighing things up. So, and that's how we should be doing it. And that's the way science works as well. You don't have sudden swithers back and forth like that. You gradually build the evidence, then you discover that maybe something you're doing is not quite right, and then you change that. You don't just say, oh, I think we should do that today. That feels right. That's not science. So anyway, so anyway, do what your country says to do. Go along. We need to be in solidarity. Everyone needs to be acting in solidarity, But then I think if your government is not really explaining things very well, do search in the World Health Organization. They're the absolute top. They're really, really clear, very systematic. They know what they're talking about. They're absolute experts on this. They've been dealing with pandemics, 200 epidemics every year they deal with around the world. And they have access to all the best information on COVID-19. They have access to preprints before they even preprints. They talk to the people in private in governments around the world who are saying things that they're not saying in public even. The World Health Organization know far more about COVID-19 than anyone. So do be sure to listen to them and think about whatever it is that they say in the video you listen to. And I especially recommend the social media Q/As. They explain things really, really clearly, and they respond to questions put in by the general public. And so they'll be asking whatever questions are on your mind. Quite often they have the very same question being put to them. They're rather different from the questions of the journalists, which are often very political. And most people aren't that political about all this. And really, what most people want to know is, how do I protect myself? How do I protect my family? What should I be doing? What's the best thing to do, and what's likely to happen in the future, and things like that. The questions you want answered, try the social media Q/A. And what exactly is the virus and what the vaccine is doing. Sometimes they explain those sort of things too. Anyway, I'll stop this. I'm trying to keep my videos a bit shorter, and so hope there's an awful lot more there. But I think to keep them a little bit shorter, I'm not necessarily going to explain everything in each of my debunks. I'll do the main points, and if there are more than one, then I'll do two videos if necessary, if I feel I need to do something after I've done. I think that's partly why my videos have got so long. I felt I tried to explain everything in the debunk that I just wrote. I think some of my videos might, and some will not. Anyway, so that's certainly long enough at 40 minutes, so I'll upload this, and hopefully it helps some of you. These are some of the questions people have asked me about, and I answered my debunk, and then I've answered them in this video as well. So hopefully that helps those of you who have these same questions as the people who have been asking me via PM and in the group.